So as you can see, we're back at the Windows Metasploit console. One of the first commands to know is the word banner. And you'll see that as you type the word banner, if we type it again, it keeps changing the banner that's being used and assigned to the Metasploit console. Now, of course, there's no specific reason for doing this, but it's just quite fun to flick backwards and forwards. Now, the next one is actually to type the word help. The word help, as it states, is really straightforward. It allows me to look at all the commands that I'm able to use, so things like quit or save or sessions, and then even down to database-specific application commands that are used for the Metasploit database itself. We also have the ability to connect, for example, so I can use connect, and let's say I connect to my blog URL 443. This will make a connection to my homepage of the site. It'll tell me that it's been connected, and the first thing it does, it'll take a bit of time to come through, but what it should do is go and grab, using a get command, and return the response back of what's come back in the retrieval process. So almost like a wget command does, where it goes and grabs the first page of something and then returns it. Now, of course, you can press Control-C, or if you're on a Mac, it'll be Command-C or whatever else, and that will stop that process. I don't want to wait for that to finish. We also have the flexibility of pinging, so all the standard commands come through, so I can go through and ping all the different bits and pieces. More importantly, we use the show command. The show command allows us to show whatever we would like to show. So I'm going to just say show exploits. And what this will do is it will now connect to the Metasploit database internally and start to grab a list of all the exploits that have been installed as part of the framework, and then it will list them all out in the screen. Now, this can take a little bit of time to load because it has to compile this list, and then the list will get rendered out for you in the console. So we'll just give it a second or so, and there we go. And if we just scroll up and down, you can see we have everything from Windows. We can scroll further up. We have different services. We have everything to do with login. These are a list of all of the exploits that exist within Metasploit. Now, what we could do is, remember, exploit was one of the first terminology words. So I could now type show payloads, and show payloads does the opposite. It goes and gets me the payload syntax that we can use. So this one, for example, here, if we take this one, is a VNC injection and gives me reverse TCP console. Now, what we could do is we could decide, well, actually, there's a specific type of exploit that I want to use. So you can use the word info, and then we could then type the exploit name. So if we were to scroll all the way back, I'll tell you the easiest way is actually just to go back and do show exploits. This will bring the list back. Then we can pick the last one that's there, and then we can get info on that specific one that's there. We can do the same thing for a payload. So for example, this one here, we can run this one in info here, and we can click this. This will then load the details of that specific payload or exploit. So if we go back to our command here, it'll tell us exactly what it is, what platform, will it give us privileged access, who it was created by, but more importantly, what it will do is it will give us the parameters that need to be specified for usage of the exploit. So for example, our host is the target machine and the port that needs to be used for that one. So you can do exactly the same thing for any of the exploits. So for example, I could type in, let me get this right. I could type exploit. I could then do a Windows specific one. I could do an SMB, and if I do a 081 standard one, same thing appears. The syntax is very specific. You just have to browse through the path of exploit, etc., etc., etc. So now that we've got a list of those exploits available, we obviously need to know how to use those, and that's done using the use command. So I can actually go in and say exploit, the same one we just did, Windows, there we go, SMB, and then I can do the same one, MS08, and I can say use that exploit. Now notice what happens here. When we choose use, we then end up coming into MSF, exploit, and then in red, the actual one we're going to use. Now at this point, we can do show options, and this will give us the same information that we had previously, such as the parameters to use. Or what we can actually do is just type the word back, and the word back will take us directly to the MSF console itself. So we can flick backwards and forwards between various things. Now if I go back and choose use exploit again, then and if I do show options, oops, I can't type show options, there we go. So after typing show options, we're listed the various properties that we can set, the R host, the R port, and the SMB pipe for this specific exploit. However, what we don't have is the ability to set a payload, to be able to say what I would like to do is use this exploit, but then I would also like to use this specific payload instead. So this can be done by navigating kind of the same syntax, but we're going to use set payload, and then we get to type Windows, and I can type meterpreter, and then I can do reverse TCP shell. Now if I just press enter on that one, and now if I do show options, what we get is we get a set of values for the actual exploit, which is R host and R port, and those are the target ends. So if this was going to be my Windows XP machine, the R host would be the IP address of that, and then the port would be 445. And then my machine, which would be this Windows machine, would then get the values of the L host and the L port. So that would tie the two ends together. So when you're looking at building kind of an exploit attack pattern, the logic is very straightforward. It's define the exploit, define the payload, and then tell it to exploit that machine. Once we'd configured everything, I would then be able to say exploit, and it would go off and start exploiting that machine. So as you can see, some basic syntax. It's really straightforward. It's really built around using the show command, the set command, and the use command, and then utilizing the info command for getting more information. As we go through the next modules and through the rest of the course, you'll obviously use different variations of this syntax to be able to perform the attacks on the target machines.